Hey everybody, welcome to another video. We're going to continue along with our Marvel Comics of 1985, our 40-year, not really reunion, but I'm going back to, since it's 2025, I'm going back to 1984 to 1985 to look at what Marvel Comics came out specifically this week. Again, I'm recording this a week early, so this is technically, I'm still in the 11th week, but this video is going to cover comics of week 12, which would be next week. It's the 12th today, so we're talking next, what would it be? Next, the 19th, and does that coincide with our list here? Let's see, March 20th, well, day off. Like I said, I think we've been a day off on these. Everything seems to be pretty close to what it was. And again, we're going to go through, I'm going to talk about some of the comics that I bought at that, specifically that week, or got delivered through a subscription. And then we'll talk, and then, you know, I'll give you some of my, experiences with them and give you kind of my opinions. I tried to go back and read all of these. There's not a lot coming out this week, and I don't think there's any epic issues, and there were no Star comic issues either. But I went back and I read a few of them. I tried to get through a couple of them, and they're a snore fest. I hate to say it. But speaking of subscriptions, it's funny, today I went to check the mailbox. I just want to bring this up real quick. Remember I had She-Hulk, Captain Marvel, and Spider-Woman subscriptions, and of course they all went out at issue 10, and I still had some issues left in the kitty, so they switched me over to, I've got Uncanny X-Men here, regular X-Men, and West Coast Avengers. And I haven't read these yet. But these are new comics, and again, I'm not really doing new comics at the moment, but I guess if you want, I think these are all from March, I'm assuming. But yeah, just for the heck of it, those are three brand new March 2025 issues. Now we're going back 40 years and talking about Marvel Comics from 1985. Did I say 2024? I meant 2025. Anyways, sorry. The years are all confusing me at the moment. Anyways, so let's get into these. I'm going to switch the screen over here. Hopefully I have this already set up because I didn't go back. Yep, I'm still set up. Alright. So again, I use this site. It's called, what do you call it? MarvelFandom.com. It's like, I think they go DC Fandom. I think it's fandom.com, and then whatever the wiki you specifically want to look for. Like it's DC. I think you put DC. That's what I usually do, .fandom.com. And again, you can copy my address if you can see it up there, but it's kind of hard to find this specific page. You can get to the wiki pretty easily, but I would, like I said, usually just go to Google, put in week 12, March 1985, if you're, whatever specific one you're looking at, or thereabouts, and then you can kind of navigate from there, and then put in a fandom.com, and it should pop you up with this page or a page similar to it, and then you can obviously scroll around pretty easier. But if you just go to the fandom.com, or even if you go to marvel.com, it takes you to like their main page, and it's very hard to find this specific page. But they've got listings, of course, you know, they do every year, and I just checked to check, and it did go all the way up until I think it even goes a couple of weeks into the future for whatever comics they've already got set. So it's pretty cool, and it's pretty, and it covers everything. So if you're looking for a specific, or you're like, hey, what issue came out that month, that year, you can look it up here. Of course, there's a DC equivalent to this, but again, the DC, for some reason, unless I'm doing something wrong, hasn't broken it down into weeks. They just do it by month and year. So I've been doing like a one, because again, I didn't really, sorry, it's that time of day when I start recording my videos, and then after I'm done doing my other work, and I end up getting sleepy. But anyways, I've been doing, I didn't collect a lot of DC comics back then, if any, and especially in 1985. So I do kind of cover them, but I'll just do one video for the month because there may be 1-2 comics for the entire month, maybe, that I would pick up from DC. And again, I mean, I want you to go back to, and I say this in every video, but let me just keep reiterating. This is the dawn of the dawn of the modern age of comic books. The Silver Age, and then of course the Bronze Age was prior to this, and the Bronze Age being 1970 to 1984. So I was born in 73, so I was born just after the Bronze Age started. But by the time I, reached an age where I was collecting comic books, I was 12. Actually, I'm technically still 11 in March of 85. But, I turned 12 in July, and, this is the first, in 1985 is the first year of the modern age of comics. So, you've got Secret Wars 1, and I think it's over with by now. And Crisis of Infinite Earths is just starting, actually in April. And then you've got, and this is pre-Dark Knight, this is pre-Watchmen. This is everything that people think about the 80s. Back in the 80s, these comics, yeah, I know, but this, you got to realize that you were in the middle of the 80s, right? Smack dab in the middle is the middle of a age jump. And again, this is still considered the modern age. And also, as I say in every video, which I find very confusing, that they need to somehow change, or at least, bring. It's all arbitrary, but I'm just saying, it makes it easier for people. We are still in the modern age. And like I said, this is 40 years ago. Every other age lasted about 15 years. Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age. Until we hit the modern age, basically comics just stopped. They stopped ranking them by age, and it's considered the modern comics. Again, I probably would have, if 85 was the beginning of the modern age, I would have probably drawn the line at 2000 and called like the millennial age or something like that, or the new, future age. I don't know, whatever you could have called it, something goofy, platinum age. I don't know. Because again, they went gold, silver, bronze, and then now they say modern, and it's like, okay, wouldn't you put something less than copper? What's less than copper? Brass age? I don't know. The tin age, the aluminum age. Yeah, so modern age, we're still in it, and arguably not much has changed. I mean, yes, I'm being very hyperbolic when I say that, but if you think about it, nothing's really changed since 1985 in the last 40 years in comic books. There's a Transformers out now. There's a G.I. Joe out now. There's a Spider-Man out now. So just Star Wars comics. Just saying. I mean, things look different. Obviously with computer color, and the art looks different, and the way they present them is different. The paper's different, obviously. So that's the thing. It's like, okay, if the modern age is like when they started using cover stock for pages, that didn't happen until like the millennium. I would say right around 2000. So that's why that would have been a good, like, computer color started coming out in the late 80s, and then it really got prevalent in like the mid 90s, where everybody's using computer color, no longer doing the plate system, with the limited palette. So you could still say that the modern age, and then they did a lot of painterly comics. So you could say that the modern age kind of started with the new art, and then you could also say that when they started going to magazine stock, or the rise of the trade paperback, kept collecting all 3 issues, 6 issues in a trade paperback, and then doing another volume, buy 6 issues, and then they all create their stories around that 6-issue arc, hoping that it would be licensed or, optioned out for film or television. Because that's what the new age is. I would call it the millennial age. And I would say that's about the time it changed. I would say 2000. I would just call it year 2000. And then in year 2015, you know, I would have changed it again, and I would have called it whatever is now. You could, I mean, you could even go on the whole generation thing, like the Zennials. This is the Zennial age of comics, you know? The dying age of comics is more like it. You know, of course, some people call it the woke age, whatever, you know. Like I said, I understand the whole woke thing, and I know the pushback about it, and, you know, and sometimes the stuff makes me roll my eyes, but really, at the end of the day, I don't, you know, I think just modern comic books are different. They had weird storylines back then. They had weird, you know, all throughout these ages I'm talking about, where things kind of reflected what was going on. I mean, there was, we'll get to it. There's a couple of comments that were made in, like the Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man. I think there was a comment made in the Mighty Thor, and I think there was even a comment made in the Transformers comics where it's like, okay, you can tell it's 80s. I mean, they made Reagan joke. They're ripping on Reagan. Kind of like how, you know, because I would assume that most of the people who worked for Marvel at the time were pretty far left, or just liberals in general. I mean, I know that Chris Claremont and Louise Simonson, Walt Simonson, a lot of those people, I mean, it's New York, you know, a lot of those people were very liberal-minded, and, you know, and I think they were against Reagan at the time, you know. Now it's the same thing. Now you're ripping on Trump, because most of the comic book creators are very liberal, you know. I know it's gotten extreme, and I know things have been a little out of whack lately. But to that, I don't want to dwell on this forever in this thing, but I just want to say one thing, is I watched on Netflix, not the Daredevil, as you can see in the corner there. That's tonight. I got to go watch the 3rd episode tonight. I've seen the first 2 episodes. I'm not even going to get into that in this video. It's good. Go watch it. But I was watching the documentary on Manson, the Manson family, you know, the Charles Manson documentary. It's on Netflix right now, and it was pretty interesting seeing, like, more color footage of, like, the Haight-Ashbury time, and, you know, the hippie movement and all that stuff during that time was going on. And I mean, if you talk about the woke people now, you look at the people, look at these young, it's all kids too. It's all young adults and kids, and they just got that, I mean, the deer caught in headlights, like similar kind of empty shark look in their eyes that a lot of, like, when you see, like, the quote-unquote woke people are when you see them. It's just like, it's not anything new. I mean, obviously, you know, and things got a little, I mean, there was extreme issues going on back then, you know, with, you know, riots at Berkeley and blah, blah, and people being shot, and, you know, I mean, this stuff's been going on forever. I think it's, you know, it's predominantly, you know, orchestrated by young people or certain older people that are, geez, everything's going off at the minute. People trying, you know, especially through the universities and college, and specifically it's college stuff. It's college kids, you know. I mean, heck, I mean, half the country, half the people were in Vietnam at the time back in the day, and that's kind of, you know, was the point, you know. And then you've got all that stuff going on with the Black Panthers, you know, and the whole, it goes in the movie, it goes into a conspiracy about the, not MJ12, the other, whatever, government project, not MJ12, that's the UFO one, oh, it's escaping me at the moment, but anyways, there was like a connection, but, like I said, nothing's changed. I think media now really push, I don't know, they push the narrative. I try to not pay attention to that stuff. I try not to let it interfere with the things that I like. Sometimes it gets a little obtrusive, a little abrasive, and I just roll my eyes and just like, whatever. But I kind of try to push it out. I mean, I'm reading comic books about robots and superheroes and, you know, metal men and talking raccoons. I don't need to hear everybody's politics, and I don't need to hear all this, you know, whatever stuff that's going on. Sorry, back to the comics. I'm going to say right off the bat, for these comics this month, that year, I think I only picked up, well, I didn't pick up, I had subscription to Star Wars, which is still coming in, and I had issue 96 came in, and I had the Transformers number 5 because I had a subscription to that. Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Star Wars, and I got those before I started collecting comic books, and I just kept kind of renewing them because, you know, actually I think my mom was renewing it, or my dad. Somebody was giving me a check to write when I had to do my renewal thing came in, and somebody, maybe my grandma might even have gave me a check to write for that. But my parents were renewing that. It was only like $15 or whatever it was at the time, and they were renewing those subscriptions. So I had those 3 subscriptions, you know, and I did have a subscription for Micronauts prior, but it had run out and I didn't renew, even though the New Voyages was going on. And I think I wanted one for ROM, and I never got a subscription for it, but I was picking those up just off the spinner racks like these. But the only ones I think I bought in the store on this list right here is Peter Parker and Fantastic Four. Like I said, I wasn't into Iron Man until issue 200 with the Ironmonger, that classic issue. The Defenders, I did not recognize this issue, so I don't even think it was one I picked up in a quarter bin or picked up, you know, sorry, in those collections. So I'm not sure. I don't remember that specific comic, and I tried to read it. The art's terrible. I can't stand the art. We'll flip through it a little bit real quick, but and it was boring. The Amazing Spider-Man, that's an index. I'm probably not gonna cover the indexes because they're not. They're basically indexing all of the comics prior up to a certain point. And I never collected them then. I got, like I said, I think I got them by accident. I'm like, what's this? Oh, this is an index. And I really wasn't into the indexes. Rocket Raccoon, I gotta say, even back then, I didn't buy it. I could have gotten into it. This is issue 2 here. I don't like talking animals. I don't like like I said, I'm not a furry, so I don't like furry characters. I mean, I did when I was little. I like stuffed animals, you know, and I do like Heathcliff. I still like the cartoon Heathcliff. I've been watching it lately from the 80s, and the Cadillac Cats, and Riff Raff and the Cadillac Cats. I like that just because it reminds me of that time period, but I'm really not into that type of stuff. And I looked through this one. I was going to read it, and I'm like, you know, I really can't get into it. It's all these type of characters, and I just didn't have any interest in it whatsoever. The only comics I went back and reread out of these that we see here is the Transformers, the Mighty Thor, and the Peter Parker issue. It's funny, the Fantastic Four, it's John Byrne, it's She-Hulk, and I got like 3 pages into it, and I'm like, this is really boring. I don't like this. And the same thing for Star Wars. I started reading the Star Wars comics, and I was like, I'm surprised they made it through the Thor, but because I thought something was going to happen in Thor, and again, I never read it before, and I do like Jackson Geiss's art, or Butch Geiss, I can't remember at the time what she was called, because I do think that particular person transitioned at some point. So I get my pronouns right here. We're just talking about that craziness, but anyways, whatever, you know, it doesn't matter what I think about that. If it bothers somebody, it's just polite. You know, if somebody wants to be referred to as, you know, Zazerzim or whatever like that, and clearly it bothers them, just be polite. You know, if you interact with people like that, just humor them. You don't have to roll your eyes. You don't have to be huff and puff. Just be polite, you know? I mean, you know, unless the person's a dick, then be a jackass, you know what I mean? But if you don't know this person, you just want to, you know, somebody clearly wants to be referred to by something, you know, just be polite and refer to him as that. You know, it's simple like that. Anyways, so let's get into these comics. Again, we'll disregard this Transformers as the UK magazine version. let's get into the comics themselves. So here, so I've got the CBRs here of them, and I don't know if nobody's asked so far, but these CBRs are pulled from like the omnibuses or collections, digital versions, and then sometimes I have to make them. Some people have already done it. I've found online. Sometimes you have to make them. Like if I have a digital copy of an omnibus, I'll cut it apart to get the issues out. I find it kind of, it's fun in a weird kind of way. I know it's a waste of time, but I mean, whatever. For this specifically, I needed to do it, and I don't think I did it with any of these. Oh no, I did it with Star Wars, and I think I did it with Thor, because I couldn't find CBRs of these. Great cover, by the way, and not just because of her legs. I think Jackson Geist is a great artist. Let's just flip through that. I got that set on 2-page. By the way, I'm using this comic book reader, and you can set it to 2 pages. You can even put the like the shadow in the middle, look like it's a page being flipped. But let's just go back to single pages here. This is issue 144 of the New Defenders, and again, this Don Perlin. It's funny, I can't think of anything off the top of my head what else Don Perlin does, but I've heard the name a lot of times. And when I saw the name, I thought, oh, isn't he supposed to be good? I don't like this art at all. I don't like the way Beast's drawn. I don't like it. I don't like the way Moondragon's not drawn, appealing at all. I don't really like that outfit that Moondragon had at this time. I like the green one just because it shows more skin. I mean, and skin head too. But anyways, more skin. And they got this creature. Like I said, I think I got to like this page here, and it's just like, oh, I just give up. I'm not going to read any more of it. It was just boring. Like again, the artwork didn't appeal to me. So I kind of waved that one off. And of course, obviously, I waved that one off back in the day. I didn't get that one off the shelf. Sorry. I'm going to try not to yawn so much. I also got the Daylights thing. Kind of threw me off this week as well. Let's go back to... let's pull up the Fantastic Four. Again, this is John Byrne in his heyday. She-Hulk's in Fantastic Four. This is like classic 80s, which is, normally it's right up my alley, but like I said, I started reading it, and it was just like, it's okay. It's funny, I made the comment about Byrne, phoning it in. Well, he didn't phone it in on this page. He definitely phoned it in on the script. But he did not phone in the art. I mean, I draw comics, and I know how tedious it is to draw all those little bobbles and all that little greebles in there, and especially for the colorist to go back and have to put that purple hue in on all the shades and all the edges and stuff to make those things pop so they're not so flat on the page, and I wouldn't want to do it. Some weirdness too with it. Like I think that blue back there. I mean, because there's blue in the uniforms. I think they could have changed that. I know these are digitally recolored versions, but I mean they're going off of the original comics from the original ink palette, which I have that palette and I use it today for my stuff. But I mean, it was just a lot of them floating in space, and I don't even know where I got to. I think right after She-Hulk. She says, "But Reed, you said whoever was scanning, don't you believe it was Dr. Doom and attacked us?" And he says something like, "Let's just say I have my doubts, blah, blah, blah." I just like, And then Johnny, gets them back in by, Reed blows himself up, and then Johnny uses his flame power. I don't know, right here, it's just like, I didn't have any interest in finish reading it, so I just gave up. Maybe I made it to the page where they get to Victor Von Doom's case. I think I made it to that page, and then I was just like, I mean, it's John Byrne She-Hulk in the Fantastic Four uniform. I mean, that's like my favorite She-Hulk, is her in that specific costume, and by Byrne. And I was just like, I just can't do it. Never finished it. I think I flipped through it just like I'm doing now. I flipped through it a little bit towards the end, but never finished reading it. It's not, you know, the art's great. You know, you got Byrne doing Byrne there. She-Hulk coming up through the floor. I mean, this is classic stuff. Great upper. That panel up there is really nice. A great use of so. I when I first started doing comic books, I really got carried away with breaking the panels. Sorry, I'm so tired. Anyways, breaking the panels, and then you really got to do it sparingly, and that's a good example when it's like you got this you got a horizontal panel, you know, to draw it straight on would look terrible, so he used a Dutch angle to really add some dynamicism to it. He's got, you know, Sue here in the foreground, you know, he's got her, you know, end of her butt there to kind of frame that little area there too. But then you've got, you know, this great image of Johnny, you know, flaming on, going through him. You know, he kind of cuts across the horizontal plane of that panel, and then you've got this really tall robot that's breaking the panel because it's so big. I mean, it's classic comic book 101, and you know, Byrne helped write I know Kirby laid down a lot of that, but Byrne also definitely helped, you know, amend the that handbook there. You know, of course, it's Byrne doing Doom. I mean, it's actually Doom, as you'll see, but you know, and you've got that Doom, or those Doom bots, Doom robots, or whatever. Actually, this is this little guy inside of it. I can't remember. Because, like I said, I didn't reread the issue. I can't remember if that was actually like. I can't remember what's going on with that. I don't know. Maybe now I'm intrigued. Maybe I'll go back and read. When I started to sit down to read it, I just got bored. I think that's the Prowler showing up there at the end. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird when I balk at Byrne class Fantastic Four She-Hulk, and something's got to be up. Again, I didn't start collecting Iron Man until after issue 200, and even at that, you know, I like X Factor, but you're gonna put what's his name, Johnny Two Young Men or whatever, the Shaman. I find that character it's nothing against because he's, you know, Indian or whatever you want, Native American or whatever. It's not why I find him boring. I just find him, you know, because obviously I like Moonstone, not Moonstone, Moonstar, Danny Moonstar from New Mutants. I like her a lot. Actually, I like Shaman's daughter too. I can't remember, Talisman, I think is her name, when she shows up. But just him in particular, I just don't have any interest in his characters. Found him kind of bleh. And then you know, they do have some, you know, they got some West Coast Avengers in here. Or is this pre-West Coast Avengers? I can't remember if West Coast has even started up yet. But you have Mockingbird and Hawkeye. That's Mockingbird's older costume too, so I think this is pre-West Coast, I think. Which is weird because, like I said, one of the comics I've got is West Coast Avengers here, the new number, issue number 4. I'll have to make videos on that stuff later. But yeah, like I said, I didn't have this issue. I was like gonna read it and like, oh, I don't really know if I want to read this, so I stopped. Again, on the Rocket Raccoon, I knew right off the bat I wasn't going to be interested in it. Forgot who, Mike Mignola art, obviously pre Hellboy art, Mike Mignola, so that's interesting. But yeah, you know, it's weird because I kind of like Bucky O'Hare for a very short period of time. It was just because of the Michael Golden art. But Bucky O'Hare kind of intrigued me a little bit when I first saw Bucky, and I don't know, for some reason that I like that. And this seems very Bucky O'Hare, but I don't know. I guess I can't get into it. I don't know. But yeah, if that's your bag, go ahead. You know, more power to you. I did read reread the Spider-Man Peter Parker. This is a scan. This isn't even a digital copy, which is always neat to look at the what do you call it, the ads and stuff in it. And again, remember, I really liked Peter Parker over Amazing at the time. Although, although this is Rick Buckler art, pretty decent art. I think Buckler did a better job than Al Milgrom. I don't have anything against Al Milgrom. A lot of people, crap on him for being a crappy artist. I think he's fine. Definitely draws the Marvel way, but I think Buckler, is a stronger artist. But that said, this comic, and I made it to the end rereading it. Remember I was talking about college kids and the whole woke thing, or even going back to the 60s and, talking about college kids in the, like Berkeley and stuff. It's just funny how this is 1985 and they, they're still portraying college kids as like these, like, the illiterati, like all college kids are, they're intellectia, or whatever you want to call it. You have this guy here, he's smoking this. I thought they were professors at first. No, they're supposed to be students. And they all wear bow ties and sweater vests, and they smoke pipes. And they sit in these these high-backed armchairs, and they contemplate the, the new blah, 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 blah. It's very weird. Because, like I said, my sister was at University of Michigan in 1985. I was obviously still in grade school, but I went to University of Michigan, which is a big college in Ann Arbor, and I went there, in 85, and none of the kids looked like this. There was nothing like this. I mean, most people had just, like, U of M sweatshirts on, or just regular clothes. There were a lot of guys with the collars pulled up, with the Izod shirts, especially a lot of rich kids, driving their dad's Porsche to college, or their Saab Turbo with their collars pulled up. They're 944. There wasn't a lot of those, but there were a few. It's just like watching, like movies, like watching Making the Grade with Judd Nelson, It's kind of had that feel. This is like whoever this writer is, I can't remember who the writer is. This is, that was Peter David. Well, there you go. There you go. Enough said. I guess proof's in the pudding there. But this is Peter David's idea of young college students, young Foggy Nelson here, or whatever. No, it's not young Foggy Nelson, but anyways, this comic is not great. Spoiler alert, 40 years. These college kids are going to pull this prank, a college prank, just like watching an 80s movie. They're going to have the college prank, and then they're going to create this character called the Blaze, this villain, and they're going to, confuse Spider-Man and the Daily Bugle and play this trick on him, and then it backfires, and then they kind of find out about it, or Spider-Man does, and then kind of turns the tables and plays a trick back on these college kids in a pretty morbid kind of way. I mean, they actually make one of the kids act like he gets burned alive by this Blaze character. It's pretty crazy. It's great art. It's classic Spider-Man art, I think. Again, the scan version of the newsprint copy of it's a little hard to tell, but better just to see the raw inks without even seeing any color. But it's not great. In fact, I call this a throwaway issue. It's definitely a throwaway issue. It's just a Monster of the Week kind of throwaway issue that's just not that compelling at all. Even the joke, when I kind of sensed where the joke was going, the gag, it's just like, really? Peter David? But yeah, so there's that. How are we doing on time? Oh, yeah, half an hour. Star Wars. Again, this is from a collected version, I think an omnibus. I gotta say, not digging the art. It's a little too Bill Sienkiewicz-ish, or Bill Sienkiewicz adjacent for me, and I just, I don't even know who this character is. I had this issue, and I think I remember seeing this issue and opening up, and I'm like, is this Star Wars? Not a lot of words, just him. I mean, we're reading it right now. Um, she's got this whip. I gotta say, I hate whips, and I don't like anything that's like flails or anything that's like that random whipping around. It just makes me really nervous. Like I can't focus, and it makes me just want to instantly flee when I see anything whipping around, like kids with fishing hooks. Oh God. Anyways, now I'm gonna obsess about that for the next few hours. Anyways, and you got this like almost death character who's all Cynthia Martin's doing the penciling. It's weird because Cynthia Martin, she does that really good version of Rogue that I like from the Marvel Universe. Love that. It's classic. Love that image. Love that illustration. Probably one of my favorite illustrations of all time. Definitely in like the top 20 favorite comic book illustrations of all time. But her comic book work is a little... She's just great. Single illustrations, but comic book work is just like, I don't know if I like it. Joe Duffy writing, I mean, they're definitely at this point, it's about to get canceled anyways, and they're just basically just coming up with just total, I mean, this is like, you want to talk about people saying like, oh, like the Acolyte, and all this stuff, Disney's, I should bring this up sometime when we talk about this with my peers, people smoking pipes and sitting around in chairs. I mean, if you think now Disney's gone off the rails with Star Wars and it's unrecognizable, this is look at this. Just look at this page. This is Star Wars. Would you know it, that it's Star Wars? No. I mean, Marvel went off the rails with this purple girl. I mean, the purple girl was kind of appealing. I mean, she was appealing looking, interesting, and it's not Mara Jade. It's Mara Plum, Mara Purple, Mara Amethyst, Mara Lavender. But yeah, it's just like no. I mean, this stuff. I mean, it looks like it almost. If you squint, it's like, am I looking at an issue of Alpha Flight? What am I looking at? It's like, this is not Star Wars. So clearly, back in the day, when everybody considers the best time, and Marvel definitely went off the deep end with Star Wars and made it unrecognizable, and then of course it got canceled. That's not Mara Jade. I can't remember. I didn't go back and read this issue. I can't remember. And I don't even think I read this when I bought it. I mean, I bought it and put it in in my other comics when I got it, because it was a Star Wars comic. And no, I was getting that's right. I was still getting the subscriptions. And I was just like, oh, like I said, by 85, this is another reason why they canceled Star Wars. By 85, I mean the buzz from Jedi was over. 83 was Jedi. They had the 83 action figures. They had another series come out in 84, and then in the 5th year, they had those Power of the Force 12-ish comics or action figures, which came with the coins, and they were really, I mean, Star Wars was just like, no, it was not in the. It was all He-Man. As far as toys go, it was He-Man, Transformers, especially Transformers by 85, and in G.I. Joe. So, and you're starting to get into stuff like Thundercats now and the Silverhawks, and I mean that wasn't until I believe 86, but maybe it started in 85. But that stuff, Star Wars was like, I mean, they did the droids and the Ewoks, which really didn't keep it going. And again, kind of a weird twist on Star Wars. And it wasn't until, like I said, the West End games came out, the books, the role-playing game kind of breathed some life back into it in like 87. And then, and then of course the Heir to the Empire and the stuff in the early 90s started to breathe, the expanded universe started to breathe life back into Star Wars. But I would say from 1985 to like 1990, 91, Star Wars was pretty dead. I mean, like dead. And I think we're kind of entering that age right now where Star Wars is kind of dead. If they don't, I know Andor is coming out, and or might keep it alive for a little while. I don't know, but like I said, that this is not, history is repeating itself. This stuff is, people think, at least from what you see online, people think like, the hell, everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. Well, we've gone hell in a handbasket before, and things have come back. Okay, the Mighty Thor. Sorry, we're almost done with this one. Mighty Thor, I read just because I saw Jack said, guys did the artwork. I'll read this. I did not have this when I was a kid. Like I said, I wasn't a big Thor person, but I love his art. And I love, this is even pre X Factor, because X Factor didn't start until '86, when, Geis I really started liking Geis' artwork. But great comic, great look in the comic. Bob Harras writing it. Of course, Bob Harras becomes the editor-in-chief once they essentially fired Jim Shooter, which he's still the editor-in-chief here. You got Bob Layton on inks. I mean, this is good. This is classic stuff here. Arguably, I think this is better than the Walt Simonson stuff, and I know a lot of people love the Walt Simonson stuff. I think Geis, I'm assuming Geis was doing a bunch of these. I don't know my Thor history that much at this time. And like I said, in order to find this, I had to really dig deep to find this, because it's not, the mighty Marvel Mighty Masterworks haven't gone this high yet. This I had to pull from an omnibus. And there's this class. It's funny because, and this does really hit home, right? This little side story that's going on within the comic. It's another throwaway lame comic where it's just like nothing really happens. But there's this with this kid, and that looks like me. That literally looks like 11, 12-year-old me, with the blonde hair, sitting there drawing with a sketchbook just like that, which has had the coil on the top, and then you'd flip it over. And I had these Strathmore sketchbooks at the time, just like that, with the yellow, and I'd flip it over, and I'd start drawing. Usually it was like 11 by 14 paper, and I would pull it out of my JanSport backpack, and I would sit there and I'd start drawing. I remember sitting on the bench outside the library and drawing superheroes at the time, and they had dicks just like these kids. These jockey sports kids would come up, and they would always, like, what are you doing? And there's a scene in this where the one kid rips, see right there at the bottom, where the kid crumbles up his drawing. I was sitting in Mr. Spitzer's art class, second semester of 7th grade, so I was 12 at the time, not 13 yet. And I drew a picture of a Croyer from Micronauts on graph paper. For some reason, I get into a kick of drawing things like, I was like going to make like a model sheet type of thing. And this kid Lee, which is a total dipshit kid. I mean, he's a retard to begin with. Wasn't a jock either. He was like a weird, just like a kind of a white trashy kind of hillbilly kid. But real big, tough kid, and big, heavy, tough kid. And he came along, and he just grabs the drawing right as I'm drawing it, and just crumbles it up into a little ball, and then just throws it across the room. And then Spitzer, actually, my teacher, actually saw him do it, and he ended up taking him to the. I think he got suspended, but I'm just like, what the fuck, dude? It's like, is my being an artist, just like in these kids, these kids here, it's like, just because you're different, just because you've got talent, are you jealous of the talent? It's like, do you want to be a comic book artist? Do you want to draw comics? Do you wish you could draw? I never understood the whole point of somebody being weird toward. I mean, I guess, like I said, and this goes into another thing I wanted to bring up too. Was junior high is brutal. My son's in it right now. It's brutal. And I guess even at the time, I remember comic books were not cool. You got to remember, 1985, comic books, being into comic books made you a target. And it wasn't cool. It wasn't, we're going to get the ladies with your, having comic books. Unless maybe you had you could sell, Batman, Detective Knight #1 for at the time $8,000. Buy yourself a Camaro or something with it. But I mean, you you weren't making many friends being into comic books, and by sitting around, especially drawing reading them is one thing. You're ostracized as it was. Most kids knew how to keep that stuff on the down low. Just don't bring that shit to school. But being in school with comic books in hand and drawing the characters, you're asking for trouble. And my junior high was like that. It was when I switched schools, it wasn't as bad. It seemed like there was more kids into stuff like that over at that school, including my friend that I met. So I kind of had more of a group, a community of clique. And some of the cool kids too, were into skateboards and stuff. So I got, I was into skateboards before that, but some of the skateboarding kids were into drawing and doing skateboard designs, and that was considered edgy and cool. So at that school it was cool, and there was more burnouts there too. And of course, comic books, and heavy metal album covers, you kind of had the whole thing. But at the other schools, ultra conservative, all the really, really rich kids on the other end of town, they were totally dicks about being into comic books. And to this day, I could see why. I was watching a Comics by Perch video, and they were talking about stuff, and I don't think I brought this up, but, my son's 13. He's in junior high, right? He doesn't like comic books. He doesn't like anything that's considered, kiddie like this. I know the movies are popular. Everybody says, oh, the movies made millions. Yeah, I know they did. All the movies, look at all these conventions with all these adults, all these hot girls in cosplay costumes and stuff. Okay, that's a weird world. It's just like the woke thing. That only exists on, college campuses. That whole hot girls wearing, thongs and stuff with their costumes and their asses hanging out at comic book conventions, that only happens at the comic book convention. That doesn't happen in school. Obviously. That doesn't happen, in the real world. Your everyday life, I don't come across, woke social justice warriors going to the grocery store. Maybe I do, and I just don't, nobody's talking about it. I just go to the store and mind my own business. And like I said, in school, it's people may think it's cool to be into, quote unquote nerd culture now, but it isn't. I hate to tell people that, but it isn't. Like I said, my son wouldn't get into this stuff, and he's all heavily into skateboarding and all that stuff, and they're not into comic books. In fact, I'm pretty sure my son's, thinks it's why is my dad still into comic books? Isn't this stuff for kids? But and like I said, I think that's why a lot of teens, specifically teen boys, teen girls can probably get away with it more. I know girls get ostracized by other girls as well too. And being different as a girl, makes you a target for, girls or other girls making fun of them, girl bullies. But, it doesn't, it's so soft and light in comparison to, what dudes go through. So, putting a target on your back, and being into the stuff today, I think is, it's just as bad as it was in the 80s. Maybe a little bit less, but, I'd have to talk to my son about that, ask him his opinions about specifically that type of thing. But that's what is in this comic. Sorry. So the comic kind of hit home when got a couple of these pages, and I was like, But again, a great artwork. I'm not a huge Hercules fan, but Geist draws Hercules very good. It's just the face, great, and it's great facial expressions there too. It's a little, even with Thor in the background too, the facial expressions. That last one's a little wonky, but the first two are great. And the way they do that in those three panels, those three vertical panels going across the middle of the page like that, and then and like I said, you got the bird's eye shot in that top panel. You got three close-ups. You've got a long shot, a bird's eye, and a medium shot. You got pretty much there's no worm's eye, although I guess technically this could be sort of worm's eye. But you've got all the classic how to draw the comics the Marvel way panel angles all on one page right here. It's classic stuff. great backgrounds, you know, great uses of breaking up those open backs, like that really stark yellow or that really kind of more eggshell yellow that's in the bottom with that blue. I mean, that's classic stuff. Yeah, punch it through the wall like that, the bricks flying out at the camera, all 1 point perspective with actually no perspective. I mean, that's all implied in perspective because there's no hard straight edges to kind of really, outside of the action lines, to really, you know, imply that. That's all 1 point perspective there. That's nice. And then diagonally to the page up top, you've got 1 point. I mean, long shot on top here, lots of stuff going on. You know, you got a worm's eye view sort of there under, you know, the car where Thor is lifting it up. Oh, great art, great art. The fight in here, they're talking about a fight. This is like, it's being highly exaggerated because it's, you know, they're telling a story. And of course, you know, Hercules comes to the kids' rescue at the end, you know, which of course is another fantasy of kids. It's just like, oh, you know, the big strong guy is going to come to my defense. Yeah, good stuff. Great looking comic. The story, outside of, you know, it's got kind of a neat thing for me personally because I've experienced that stuff firsthand. But I mean, outside of that, it's just kind of a throwaway issue. But that's fine. That's a great cover too. Okay, last but not least, let's cover this Transformers comic and let's get out of here after this. Let's see. Transformers number 5. So this is pretty new into the original Transformers comic. Again, I believe this is a scan of a comic. I didn't get this Honeymooners page. I don't know if this is somebody to scan this and put this in there. That would have been in the first page because that's the inside of the front cover, this ad. And then you've got this, I don't know why that's in there, but I would assume that would be the normal first page. This is a cool issue with Shockwave in it. I don't know if you read this. Again, spoiler alerts, it's been 40 years, but Shockwave had basically come to, I didn't read number 4 recently, but I think I kind of remember Shockwave came to the rescue of the Decepticons because they were getting their butts kicked by the Autobots. And I can't remember what he did, but he ended up cleaning house, and then he took a lot of the Autobots back and hung them from the ceiling like slabs of meat, which I thought was really cool. That's a great... It's not really well drawn, but the concept is really neat and very, you know... I remember as a kid, like, oh my god, they're all bleeding oil, and they're hanging upside down like a bunch of dead bodies, like they've been strung up. There's Hound, there's Blue Streak, you know, there's Prowl, they're all dead. That Starscream, those jets are really not drawn well. But I don't know if you remember that thing. That's a really terrible Megatron. This splash page could not be any more phoned in by Mr. Alan Kupperberg. But yeah, that's a terrible cover. The artwork in the Transformers back then was not great. Let's just put it that way. G.I. Joe, had much stronger artwork. You know, they had Herb Trimpe at the think. You know, I don't know who was doing what at the time in G.I. Joe at this point. But, you know, in the first 10 issues, you had Herb Trimpe doing a lot of the art, which he's great. Herb Trimpe does great robots. They should have got him to do this. And this is hot. I mean, this comic, by issue 5, was hot. I mean, this is a great comic. And, I mean, I jumped on with a subscription right off the bat, right at issue 1. I think I bought issue 1 on the newsstand, and then I signed up, and I think it might have kicked in by issue 3 or whatever, but I had this issue. This is one of the ones that came by subscription. I think I had to buy 2 as well, off the spinner rack. When I say spinner rack, I'm being more, even though Fireside Bookstore had spinner racks, their comics were on a spinner rack. And so B. Dalton had a spinner rack, and Walden Books has a spinner rack. Rochester Book Center, which I guess is the minority of all the bookstores in Rochester, but it had them on. They made like wood shelves, and they had them up on the wood shelves. I preferred the wood shelf, like magazine shelves. I preferred those better, just because they were easy to get the comics on and off and put back without having to fight them into the spinner rack. But they. I think they had a spinner rack there that had back issues on it. It had those comics I was telling you about, where they bagged them up or saran wrapped them up. But their main comics were on this shelf. But they were the only ones of all of them. Everybody else had spinners. So I guess when I say spinner rack, I mean, it depends on where I got it. Most of the time, in '85, most of my comics were bought at Rochester Book Center off those shelves. Like I said, if I'd miss something, and I'd pick it up at Walden Books on the Great Oaks Mall, coming back from riding my bike up to the other store. And like I said, rarely did I ever go out to B. Dalton and Meadowbrook. Like if I made it to Meadowbrook, I would go into B. Dalton, but normally that wasn't a bike destination that I'd go to very far. And then, of course, arguably, with Winchester Mall, I was up on the hill in Rochester Hills. I didn't go there much until we moved to the trailer park. Then I stopped going to Rochester Book Center, and I primarily went to Fireside. But again, Fireside and Rochester Book Center are sister stores, same owner. Where B. Dalton and Walden's were chains, Fireside and the other one were a mom and pop, only store. But this comic's okay. I mean, you got this thing going where they think these paramedic drivers are like, why the thing's talking? It's like, because remember, this was robots in disguise back then, and you didn't know it was a robot. He does, Buster here, Buster Witwicky, which again I'm trying to remember. Spike, I don't think they started calling him Spike until the cartoon. Am I right on that? Obviously Sparkplug was the dad, Sparkplug, and then his son, Spike. But I think in the comics he was just called Buster Witwicky until I think after the cartoon, and I think they changed his name to Spike. I can't remember. And Spike becomes a brown-haired kid as opposed to a towhead like me here. But the artwork's, like I said, the artwork's not great. It's not. I mean, the compositions on some of the panels are fine, but just the execution of drawing these robots is just, I mean, it looks like the person really liked to draw Shockwave, because Shockwave's drawn really well in most of the panels. But Megatron, of course, in transforming, some of the panels are a little rough, and his people aren't great either. This artist is not great. Other than one of those pages, but regardless, it's a pretty decent issue. They get better. And some of the ones before this were better, but the classic cover, though, I mean, that was a class. I mean, all the Transformers are all dead, and you got smoking gun there of Shockwave, and this is, this also started those kid kind of like, kid rumors, those kid theories, kid conspiracy, where you're like, oh yeah, the most bad, who's that? Of course, that's how kids were when they're 11 and 12 years old. Who can beat up who? Who's the toughest? Who's the baddest? Right? It's like, oh, who's the toughest Transformer? Oh, it's Megatron. No, man, it's Optimus Prime. And then people like me, no, I think it's Soundwave. I think Soundwave can kill them all because I really like Soundwave. And then it's like, oh no, then the Dinobots came out and they could beat up everybody. I remember at the time, all the kids were going, there was one kid that had Shockwave, and he was obsessed with Shockwave. And he was like, oh no, Shockwave is the toughest. He could kill them all. Did you see the comic in number 5 where he kills them all? It's technically happened in number 4. He didn't kill them all. but yeah, it's just funny, that whole time period. Again, no wonder people beat the shit out of us or made fun of us or picked on us, But again, this, when I say that, the conversation specifically about Transformers, stuff like that, that was going on in like 6th grade, still in elementary school. And again, you kind of got a pass. you could be a little weird. You could like comic books. You could even buy Transformer toys. You could collect G.I. Joe guys and get kind of a pass in 6th grade, although you were still kind of expected to, stop playing with toys and pick up a skateboard or a guitar or a football, and, start being a douche like everybody else. But you kind of got a pass in 6th grade. But by 7th grade, and you entered those halls of junior high, when at the time for me it was 7th through 9th. You're there with 9th graders, and 8th graders. You better leave the toys at home, buddy. You don't want to go. You don't want to be prancing around the halls with your comic books, in your arm. And heaven forbid you draw, and have a sketchbook with a bunch of superheroes that you've drawn in it. Ooh, you're asking for trouble. Just find it funny. It's sad. And obviously I think a lot of that stuff probably effed me up as a kid. But I mean, my son seems like like I said, he's cool. My son would have beat me up if I was going to school with him. Because he was too cool I couldn't hang out with my son. He would have been too cool. I wasn't that cool when I was his age. But anyways, so there it is. This is week 12 of Marvel Comics from 1984. So again, I'll next week, when it's actually real week 12, I'll drop this on Wednesday, on New Comic Book Day, which reminds me, I got to go check new comic books that came out this week. New comic books, and I probably won't get back to the comic shop. I usually go like once a month. And then there's, like I said, the Diamond thing has screwed up my comic book shop, and he didn't get another comic that came out, and I ended up having to go to Comics Corner. I was down in Rochester I go there once a month to, caretake on my mom's house, and I went over to Comics Corner and they had it, so I picked up the comic there. But going to the comic book shop now is kind of hit or miss. I mean, I find also weird they sent all of these at once. I mean, I know this one's out. I think this is like last week. And I think this is last week, or one of these was last week. I can't remember. I gotta look. I'll read those. Although I gotta say, this is on issue 4 now. I thought the West Coast Adventures would be great. You got Spider-Woman. I love Spider-Woman. And then they got What's-Her-Face in it. And then they got a bunch of the Ultrons in it and stuff. But, gotta say, I'm not impressed so far. And like I said, the Uncanny and regular X-Men, I think it's kind of boring. It's not holding my attention much. So, like I said, right now, new comics. This is kind of why I'm doing this, going back and reading old comics. And as you can see, old comics, yes, I think overall, yes. People have a lot of fondness and nostalgia for that time period. And yes, a lot of the comics were better. But that's not to say that in a given week, you would have half the comics, if not the majority of the comics that came out, were stinkers. And you only had maybe 1 or 2 good ones. It's kind of like it is now. But now I'm not finding 1 or 2 good ones. I'm finding 1 maybe every couple of weeks. But anyways. Alright, we've gone our hour, so let's stop the video there as I keep whacking the table. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Alright, bye-bye.